I started my career in IT in 19. I'm Tracy Patterson. I design all types of computer training for adults. And in this video, I want to introduce to you how computers communicate. This is computer networking. So networking is the technology of getting two devices to talk to each other and to exchange information. When you go online, your computer is talking to some other computer out in the world. And to talk to that computer, it's going through a lot of stops. And it's going through a lot of other computers, and it's going through a lot of cabling. Just like if you were traveling from LA to New York, you can map a direct route, but you're going to go through a lot of different cities on the way, and you're going to go through a lot of road. A better example might be driving from Paris to Istanbul. You can drive from Paris to Istanbul. There's a lot of roads you're going to go through and a lot of cities. But now you're passing through different countries, and each country has a barrier that you have to navigate, the border, which you're going to navigate with your passport to see if you're going to be let in or not. And then once you're in each different country, there's a different language that needs to be navigated somehow. You might need to know the other language, they might need to know your language, or you have some type of interpreter, digital or in person, but somehow you're going to have to speak the same language, because if you're driving on these roads and there are signs on the road, you need to be able to read those signs to know how to continue to go in the right direction. Networking is a lot is kind of like that. Only instead of different languages, we're using different protocols. Now, there are organizations, and there's one overarching organization that has done a lot of work to try to get manufacturers and to try to get developers together on the same page and agreeing on a lot of these protocols, so it's easier for more computers to talk to each other, to communicate with each other, to send data back and forth to each other. For instance, if you're familiar with IP addresses, that's an address that a computer is assigned, or a device, not just a computer. Printers, your phone, any device on the internet is going to have an IP address. And that is an address that's not necessarily permanent, but that's assigned to your computer. So when you send data out in the world and you want it to come back, for instance, you type in your computer www.website.com, that request is sent out into the world, and you want it to come back to your computer with the website. Whatever's on that website needs to be sent back to your computer. Well, the way that the computer www.website.com knows how to send it back to you is through the IP address that you sent out, and so now it knows to send it back to that same IP address, like a return address on an envelope. If you send something to somebody, they know who to send it right back to, because assuming you have written in your address in the return address section on an envelope. I started my career in IT in 1993, working for a major airlines, and my job title was network administrator. I was responsible for a couple of small networks on the floor, on a certain floor, to making sure that those computers stayed connected, and whatever resources that they all used that were part of the network, that they always had access to it. For instance, printers, making sure everybody does not get their own printer in a cubicle. making sure that they get to the shared printer, making sure that they got to shared applications and shared file spaces. because was working for an airline, there were several systems, and again, this is back in the day when networking was it was a lot rougher. There were a lot more moving parts than now. You had to install a lot of software. So, but working for the airlines, there are several other systems that needed to be accessed, not just the immediate network and what that department might be sharing, what files they might be sharing, but scheduling systems. People had to know what other schedules are, access to the internet, which again, back then in 1993 was new-ish, but in the business world, it was very well used. And we all had to have access to the ticketing system, where you could see flights. You could see how many flights were booked, when flights were, what cities they were coming in and out of. I didn't have to do the luggage system, thankfully. It was overwhelming enough with all of that. So I had to make sure all the users in our department had access to these, and when something didn't work, when it broke down, and it did, I'd have to go check out and see why and fix it. In addition, because on that type of job, I did have downtime, and because I worked for IT, and I got to work on a team that put out one of the first automated ticket machines in the country. We launched that program. I got to be a part of that team, and we even got to go to Europe to consult with another airline on what we did to launch our automated ticket machine program. Computer networking. There's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of levels to it. My entry-level job, I worked with maybe 50 people, 50 workstations, and several servers, several shared devices, and a whole lot of cabling. Again, back then, it was a little different. There was a lot more that had to be configured and installed. But a lot of the principles are still there. The networking principles are still the same after 30 some years of there needs to be a physical connection, or there needs to be some physical mode of how data is passed. And then there's all the layers of protocol, how machines talk to each other, how they agree on the same language, so to speak, to talk to each other. My career in networking has taken me from Fortune 500 companies to nonprofits to very small businesses, and of course individuals, connecting things in people's homes. In my career, because of my start with networking, I have touched on many spaces, including network administration, computer networking, security, IT security, technical writing articles and papers, teaching, and application development, developing apps for the PC, for phone, and for virtual reality. Networking is a very necessary job, and there's lots of levels to it. Network administrators, network engineers, security, IT security professionals. There's lots of different layers. You can work as small or as granular as you like. For instance, just working with small companies. I just finished working with a company that has 4 computers in the office, 1 shared printer, 1 shared server. Or you might work someplace super large and not necessarily be a cog in the machine, but you're going to get an understanding of how larger networks work. I have a friend who works for Cisco, which is one of the largest companies in the world that make networking devices that know how to route information from one computer to another. They provide networking for they provide devices and networking for some of the biggest companies in the world, including cabling lines under the ocean to get across from one continent to the other. Understanding networking is the basis of understanding cybersecurity. Security is all about keeping these computers safe. Why do you need to keep them safe? Because they're connected to each other. You don't need cybersecurity for a standalone computer that is not connected to the internet or any other computer. So understanding how data gets from one computer to the other, you need to understand that so you can understand how to protect, how to identify data that should not be going back and forth or data that is potentially dangerous, as well as how you're going to keep the computer safe. If you don't understand carpentry, you can't build a good door that's going to keep your house safe. But once you understand the principles of plumb and level and how to create a door that fits and how to put a lock in there, install a lock that is sturdy, now you're secure, you're safe. Computers are networked everywhere, all over the world, in every industry. So that's another cool thing. This is a type of job where you could work in any type of industry that you might be interested in. Like I said, I've worked for airlines, I've worked for nonprofits that served children, nonprofits that served seniors. I've worked for small businesses that are in construction. I've worked for small businesses that are a medical device manufacturer. You can work anywhere. If there's an industry that you're interested in, and this is a field that you might be interested in, you got a good marriage going on there. If you're interested in film, maybe, or amusement parks, or fashion, or zoology, whatever it is, there are businesses and organizations where computers are networked and they will need someone to manage that.